All right, so let's see if you can just do this for yourself. See if you can write the bicarbonate ion equation without looking. Turn the page to the next page, right at the top. See how far you can get. You need to test yourself. Um, Give it a try. See how many terms you can write. You know, carbon dioxide is in there. You may remember carbonic acid, bicarbonate ion. You know, all these things are sort of related to each other. So, yeah, you give it a try. And then look back in your notes and write out the equation for real. Get it right. You know, you got to keep trying at this. You know that you're going to have to replicate this. Even if you're not meant to actually replicate it on an exam, you must be able to understand the entire concept of that particular equation. Now, the reason why I keep going back to the bicarbonate ion equation is that it's incredibly important for ensuring that blood pH is accurate. There are going to be two other systems of the body: the respiratory system with the lungs, the urinary system with the kidneys, that are going to be contributing. But the way that they contribute to blood pH at the end of the day is mostly by ensuring that the appropriate levels of these substances in the bicarbonate ion buffer system are accurate. So here it is. Here's water plus carbon dioxide, especially in the presence of this enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, is able to uh, combine together to make this carbonic acid, the weak acid, and then the carbonic acid can partially dissociate into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions, and therefore we have this buffer system that is allowable, that allows us to immediately make changes. Remember, within seconds, you're able to make changes just by having these substances. So if you write this out then, if you write this entire equation out at the top of your page, I want you to keep in mind this guy here, bicarbonate ions, so important. The levels of bicarbonate ions are mediated by the kidneys. The kidneys keep these guys at a level that is about 25 milliequivalents per liter. That's small m, large E, small q, slash large L. Milliequivalents per liters. It's just a measurement of concentration. So about 25 milliequivalents per liter is the appropriate level of bicarbonate ions in the blood. And if the levels deviate beyond or below that, you know that something is going on. And we'll discuss that in class. But for now, you must remember the 25. Okay, this guy right here, carbonic acid. The levels of carbonic acid are kept much lower. They're kept at about 1 milliequivalent per liter because the bicarbonate ion is so much more important. The carbonic acid is maintained by the presence of carbon dioxide. So oftentimes when we're looking at carbonic acid, we're inferring that the appropriate level of carbonic acid is present at 1 milliequivalent per liter by taking a look at our partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So those are the numbers that we'll be looking at in class. You may remember that our carbon dioxide should be kept at about 40. Do you remember that? I think anywhere between 35 and 45 millimeters of mercury is an appropriate level of partial pressure for carbon dioxide. So again, if the levels go far beyond 45 or go far below 35, you know that something else is going on. So those are the kind of numbers we'll be taking a look at in class. Just very quickly, though, we'll discuss the respiratory mechanisms. The respiratory compensation for pH imbalances is slower than the buffer system itself, but it's more powerful than all the buffer systems. It can expel carbon dioxide from the body at the same rate as it is expelled from the tissues. Much of the carbon dioxide is transported as carbonic acid, as you know. We will be discussing the situation of hypercapnia, which is high carbon dioxide levels in the blood. We'll be discussing the levels of the concept of hypocapnia, which is low levels of carbon dioxide in the blood. I want you to think about what each of those situations would do to the chemoreceptors. Remember, the chemoreceptors will be sensing carbon dioxide levels and will then have impacts on the DRG, the VRG, the things that actually have specific inputs into how fast our respiratory breathing rate is. So I want you to think about hypercapnia or hypocapnia and what those specific instances would do to the breathing rate, like how they would they enhance the breathing rate or would they decrease the breathing rate? And we'll talk about some of those examples in class. Okay, and just a rule of thumb, because I know it's not entirely clear, perhaps, yet. If you have high carbon dioxide levels, you will have high hydrogen ion levels. So you must equate the two. High carbon dioxide means high acidity, very dangerous. We monitor carbon dioxide levels even more closely than we monitor oxygen levels for that reason, because you can't survive high acidity for long. Your proteins will denature. Okay, so I want you to think about what happens in high carbon dioxide or low carbon dioxide levels. I want you to think about instances that might make those situations occur. Like, why would you ever have hypercapnia, or why would you ever have hypocapnia? So we'll discuss that stuff in class. Alrighty, and then very quickly we'll go through the renal mechanisms, which can be honestly quite a nightmare. Oh boy. But I think that what will, so renal mechanisms will compensate for pH imbalances. They work much slower. So whereas the buffer systems work within seconds, respiratory compensation can happen within, say, a minute or two. Renal mechanisms will take much longer, maybe a few hours, maybe more than a day. The idea of kidneys is, of course, the first role of kidneys in this system is to rid the body of the acid waste of metabolism. You got the uric acid, phosphoric acid, lactic acid, ketone bodies. These, of course, are dispensed through the renal tubules. Here's the tubule lumen here. The renal tubules will never resorb these things. You know, they'll be released in the form of urine. It'll become filtrated and will never be reabsorbed. It will leave the body in the form of urine. But also, kidneys do a second thing. They're able to regulate your levels of alkaline substances and renew the levels of buffers. Most importantly, the bicarbonate ion. And there it is. We have bicarbonate ion newly formed being brought into the peritubular capillary, so being reabsorbed by these amazing cells in the walls of the renal tubules. You can see that it was able to take water and carbon dioxide in the presence of carbonic anhydrase, make our carbonic acid. The carbonic acid then was split into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions. The bicarbonate ions were reabsorbed into the peritubular capillaries. The hydrogen ions were dispensed into the renal tubules. This is an endergonic process, so it required energy to allow that to happen. You can see that we have the symport of chloride ions that allow for the extraction of the bicarbonate ions into the blood. So it takes a lot of energy to do this. It's not easy to do it, but it's important. It's important to renew or regulate your levels of bicarbonate ions into the blood, and that is how it happens. Okay, so that's a thing. I think what I wanted to say about the renal mechanisms. Again, there's two ways that the kidneys contribute to pH balance, and one of them is to get rid of the acid waste of metabolism, and another one is to renew your levels of bicarbonate ion.